All right, we're live. First seminar here from Big Dog Tackle. Hope everybody's doing good out there with this coronavirus. Everybody's trying to practice social distancing. I think things are looking good out there. Things are starting to calm down. The numbers are dwindling a little bit, and a lot of people have been out there fishing, getting on their boats. You know, a good way to get away from everything, especially the grocery stores and the places that are busy. So, you know, we wanted to get something going here, and who better to bring than Goddess Charters, local charter business. Captain Cory, Burlew, fishes all types of fishing in local waters and also in the Bahamas. Great captain. Captain Cory, tell you a little bit about what's going on out there in the waters lately. Being April is typically the best fishing month of the year. All the species tend to be in our local waters, and they like to bite. So even the novice fishermen can get out there and bend the rod a little bit. So Captain Cory is going to work on some techniques on rigging, both dead bait and lures, and even talk a little bit about live bait fishing today. So I'm going to let Cory go ahead and give you a little fishing report. After that, I'm going to go through some events that are coming up through the offshore anglers and locally, and what we're trying to do to both practice social distancing and, you know, have a good time out there on the water. So I'm going to let Cory do local fishing report.
Okay, guys, everything's been biting. Anywhere from barracuda all the way up to tuna, kingfish, mahi, wahoo, sailfish, bonitas, and everything's been real close, anywhere from 75 to 200 feet of water. So, and there's been a lot of flyers around. Today, for example, there's a lot of flyers, good north current. Water a little dirty, but not bad. And today we did very well. We caught our limit of kings. We had a really big tuna on that took probably half a spool of line out before I ended up breaking a leader, unfortunately. And yesterday, for example, we caught some dolphin, bonitas, kings. I even caught some sailfish throughout the week. So there's been a little of everything out there. And like Trey was saying, they were being aggressive. I mean, kingfish are eating on top, trolling. So it gives you an idea that there's a large school around, and they're very aggressive. So they're hungry. So you guys got to get out there. That's all I can say.
I even have a report from one of our local teams, the Meat Wagon. They said 2 big yellowfins were crashing their kite bait. So that's pretty cool out there.
That is awesome.
I think this time of year they're migrating with the blackfins as well.
Absolutely.
Maybe working their way over to the Bahamas.
Yep. Give
me a little report about what you're hearing over in the Bahamas right now.
Well, unfortunately, the Bahamas are closed, but if you can get over there, there has been some big dolphin, especially off like Matinella Reef area, and some yellowfin tunas, and also over by Freeport area. You know, it's been getting a few there when people are getting over there. So maybe this will be a good year for everything kind of relax a little bit with all this coronavirus going on. But if you can sneak over there or whatever, it's been pretty good.
Well, hopefully we get to an environment where we can loosen up those restrictions, and maybe they'll let us back over there a little bit in the Bahamas pretty soon. Because now is a great time to be over there. I think the marlin are biting pretty hard, the yellowfins. Even though there's a lot of sharks, I mean, you got to beat those sharks to the tunas. But
yes.
Even over here, I mean, we had 3 hammerheads circling our boat all day. So trying to, I even heard reports of the porpoises were eating baits and fish, and you know, it's tough out there. Everybody's trying to eat, so. Which
is good, because that means there's a big school of kings, whatever's out there, and they're all following around. So that's why everything's just active. And there's, you know, with that being said, you know, like you said, you try to catch these things as fast as you can without getting eaten by sharks or porpoises and stuff like that. But it gives you an idea that there's a lot of life out there.
So you mentioned flyers are out there.
Yes.
Now, let me just ask you a question for the audience out there. What kind of birds for what kind of fish are you looking for?
Okay, so if you see a man-of-war bird, typically there's going to be some mahi around. They generally don't follow the tunas because they're not quite fast enough to keep up with them. But if they're big yellowfins, they can in a way. But most of the time, they're going to follow the mahi or the sailfish, and bonita sometimes. Now, little white birds that you'll see mostly are on the tunas and small dolphin and bonitas as well. And then if you get a mix between the small white birds and the little brown and white birds, those are always on anywhere from football-sized tunas up to big yellowfins, if there's some around here.
Okay, perfect. And I think Cory's going to get into more detail on what lures and what baits are going to be better for the different species, whether it's tuna, dolphin, maybe even a little wahoo, or even live bait kite fishing. I'm going to pass it to Cory.
All right. Thank you. So I guess what would we like to start with? I guess we'll start with dolphin fishing, because they'll be, as we get into April and into May, the dolphins will start showing up, and they'll usually show up a little bit close to the reef. So typically you can do a couple different things. I always seem like to have a nice lure in the spread, because sometimes the bigger fish will eat a lure, just so everybody can see it. And you can get these at Big Dog Tackle. These are actually really nice lures. I got like 4 of them. So with that being single hook on mono, it can be on 60-pound, whatever you like, but I generally try to fish a little bit lighter for around here, because everybody's they're so used to seeing heavy tackle everywhere else, so once they get down here it seems like they're a little more finicky. So here's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to make a typical like strip rig. First thing you do is basically, it's 60-pound leader. You know, you can either have a wind-on leader on your rods, or if you have a snap swivel, of course, you have it tied to your main line. You can make a long leader so they're all ready to go at all times. So you can do, you know, whatever knot you like. I use a tri-lean knot, or you can use a uni knot or an improved clinch knot, whatever works best for you. But these are tri-leans. They're usually 100% knot. What's nice about the tri-lean knot is when you cinch it down, it's really tiny. So I like everything small so it travels through the water very well. I don't know if everybody can see that, hopefully. It's 100% knot, very tiny. So then, like I said, this is just going to be a basic strip rig, 7/0 hook. Some people like closed, some like open. Doesn't make a difference. So then what I generally do is, let's say you can make a, now the reason I got mostly blues and whites is because there's been a lot of flyers around. So put a little flashies. It's a very simple rig. And then what you can do is, you know, if you're going to have a long leader, you can do a perfection loop knot, so that way you can connect it to your snap swivel. But if you have a wind on, you can do a double uni knot to the lines. And that's what it's going to look like when you're done. And that way, if you have, like I said, if you have a snap swivel already on there, clip it on, you're ready to go at all times. Now, what's nice about this rig, I'll show you something here. And you're probably asking, well, how do you connect the strip on there? I'll show you real quick. I haven't finished it up with it, so let me trim it up. This is where it makes it nice. So you got your rig. Get a little piece of heavy Monel, which is usually about 60 or 80-pound Monel. You simply push it through the eye of the hook, leave a little tag like that. Pinch it down, and all you're doing is taking this and wrapping around the hook just like this. Now you can make it a lot easier here, of course. So then all you have is like that. And here's the tag end. So now what you do is you just bend this up like this. And then, very easy, got your strip. You know, if you guys are good at cutting strips, and cut them. If not, then Big Dog Tackle has endless supplies of them, I think. So now what you do is you measure. Now I like to go through the shiny side first, because when this bait rides in the water, this acts as a rudder. So your hook's going to be traveling like this in the water, not like this where most people think, because they want to turn like this. So with that being said, you want the shiny part on the front, so when they're looking up, they see the white traveling through the water. So all you do is you make a hole at the very top, put the pin through, push that down just a little bit like that, measure out your bend of your hook, and that's it. You're ready to go. You slide down your stuff. And that looks pretty. So now you got your reel. Now you can use fluorocarbon if you want. I just got some mono here, so whatever you guys got. If you want to go a little heavier, 80, you can. I mean, you can generally, if you've got big fish around, I would say go up to like 60 at least. But if they're like average, like 5-8 pounds, like they are sometimes, bump it down to 40 or 50 pounds. You'll get more bites. Just got to be a little easier on the fight department. And then when you get them in the boat, just make sure you gaff them with a small pick gaff of some sort. And then there's your rig. Now, what's nice about this rig, so let's say you're trolling along there, and I'm going to throw this out there as well. If you don't have strips, you make the same exact rig with that pin. Just push that pin up, and you don't have to have a bait on there. So now you just have a bug. We call this a bug. And it's ready to go. And you control it for tunas or the dolphin and sails or whatever else. Again, with that pin there, you can put a bait on, or if you don't, you don't have any strips, then you can just make that, and it stays the same. So it's like a universal rig. You can do two things at once. And like I said, make sure that the hook goes through the skin part first, because that allows the bait, as the fish are looking up, to see it versus just seeing the meat department. So you'll actually see the bait like this when it's going through the water. There's a really typical strip rig. Works everywhere, offshore, inshore, on the planers, on leads, way back or whatever. But this rig is a very, very good rig. So then you have in your spread, if you're going to go dolphin fishing, got one big lure in the middle, okay? One large strip on the sides or however. And you try to go with different size baits. So the next rig I'm going to show you is ballyhoo rig. Now you can either crimp or tie knots, whichever you guys are preferred. I can show you now, but what I'll do is I'll do the crimp because it'll be maybe a little easier for everybody. So all we're going to do is it's going to be actually, yeah, these
Cory,
are.
we have a question.
Yes.
How fast are you trolling for Mahi?
Okay, so if you don't have any planers out, you can troll up to 9-10 knots with these kind of rigs, the lure and the strips. The faster the better, because sometimes you'll get the bigger fish to eat versus the small ones. The small ones will try to chase it down and they miss it or whatever. But that's what's nice about trolling fast. You can cover ground. If people are always going really slow, I find speed kills. I hate to say it, but they do, and it works very, very well. They hopefully answer. Okay. Okay, so when you do, I'm going to do a splasher rig first. It's very basic. Crimp, line, hook, which is a 7/0 hook, because we're using medium-sized ballyhoo. Get in there. There we go. Very simple. Nothing special. The loop. Sometimes you can stiff rig it, wrap it around the shank of the hook too. That way the hook sits in there, but this is fine. And
Cory,
yes, sir.
show this camera.
Oh, sorry. Very simple. Sorry about that. I'm closer to the phone here. Okay, and now when you crimp, here's the biggest thing people don't realize. You crimp, make sure you crimp the middle of the crimp. For 100% crimp, you want it crimped so you have a flare on both ends. Okay? You don't want it crimped on the very end, because what happens, it ends up cutting into the mono. So if you get a nice fish on and it pulls to the side like this, after a little while it's going to break off and you're like, oh man, it broke off. And that's the reason. And it's 100%. Okay, like I said, this is just a splasher rig. So nothing fancy.
Just a basic question for you, Cory.
Yes.
For novice out there that don't crimp. The sleeve packages have the pound test on the back of them.
Correct, yes. So that way you know what size. So, and then according to your mono, most of your mono, for example, it has 0.80. So when you look at crimps, for example, here, I don't know if you can see it. So they're labeled here like 50 to 80 pound crimps. That's 1.0. So now it's a little big because they're the smaller. They're very tiny, first of all, but that will work as long as you crimp it, give it a little oomph into your grip. But that's how you go. You go by the diameter line, go by your crimps, and then it depends on what kind of mono too. So you can check that out. So then you got that rig. You got some nose wire here. I usually will put it around. Actually, sometimes it's better to put it on the loop. That way it can maneuver around a little bit better. Now you're probably wondering, you'll see some rigs that have a pin it usually comes up where the crimp's at. It usually sticks up kind of like, I'm sure everybody's seen them or maybe haven't, but the pin sticks up kind of like that. And that helps you guide it through there. So the reason I don't do it that way is because if you get a sailfish or dolphin and they go to grab and eat that bait and that pin's sticking up, it's just like anybody of us that gets pricked by a pin, they go to bite down, they automatically let go of the bait and that's it. They feel something, they're gone. So with that gone, everything's smooth so they can come up. So the only thing I would do is I would wrap it around the mono like 1 or 2 times, and this acts as your pin. You can see how long this is, okay? So that's very easy. So then what we do is a bally. Now again, this is a splash bally, so I do, actually this will be fine. The way I rig my baits is, first of all, you check your baits. You see the pec fins on the side here. If they're laying flat, you're fine. You'll see some in the packages, sometimes they're laying the opposite way, you take them off. All right, and the easiest way to do is either hold onto it and twist it. They come right off like that. Or, if you don't have the hand strength, you get some pair of scissors. Easy enough, and you just, boom, trim. Okay, that's step 1. A lot of people don't like rigging these because they take through. Step 2 is I usually will cut a little slot in their butt, and they poop it out. See all the stuff coming out? That's what you want to do. The reason you do this is you want everything so aerodynamic so when it goes in the water it swims and looks natural. So that's step 2. And then usually I'll take the eyes out. 2 reasons: for rigging purposes, and I find that if you don't take them out and then you put your nose wire through it, that the eyes have a tendency of bugging out after a while as you troll it. Like that. And then step 3, since we're rigging a splasher, usually you can just break the bill like halfway. And watch this little trick here. Pull this little sleeve back, see how it kind of peels? That will lay up, that's your mono, how it's going to lay up in there nice and even. So then your next step, splasher. All they do is measure where the crimp's going to be, where the end of this nose wire is, and you see where the bend of your hook is. Just give it a little poke. There's your little hole, marks it. All you do is kind of bend the hook, the ballyhoo I mean, slide it in there like that, and this will pop out like so. Slide the hook down, wiggle it if you have to, and it should, see how, I haven't even done anything, and look how it sits. And that's what you want. So then you take the nose wire, this is how you seal it up, the very end of it, go through the bottom. This is where the pin on some of these rigs will come in handy, but you take this and it'll pop right through like that. And this pulls the mono like that. You make one little wrap around here, keeping it tight. Make sure everything's tight. Wrap this around his gill plates. And here's the trick too, is once you do all that, I'm going to try and go as slow as I can, guys. Thank you. And so you wrap it around the eye socket, and that's another reason why you take the eyes out. That way it's so easy to wrap around his gill. So you want to keep all this nice. Everything's got to be tight, guys. Remember, you're moving fast. Now with these kind of baits, you can't move more than 8 miles an hour. So you don't want to go too fast because they'll be skipping all over the place. And that's what these are designed for, to skip. Okay? So once you get that all wrapped up there, I mean, it depends on how nose your wire is. You can get the copper wire that's already pre-cut, or you can buy the soft stainless wire that's like 15 pounds each, and you can make it as long as you want or as short as you want. And then where you peel back that piece of skin, the mono will lay up in there. And I'll show you a little quick trick too. All right, so this, you wrap all the way up there for a splasher, okay? So it's all rigged like this. Now, if you want a swimmer without lead, and this will work going like 4 to 5 miles an hour. So what you do is, this is the tricky part, is you pull the mono back a little bit, split the bill. See how the bill is, the line's in the middle of it? Wrap on both sides, and then you just do this. And then whatever bill is left in there, you trim it with a pair of pliers. Now this makes the bait pull from this. And you can see where the mono's at. Now your last step is what I've always done, is before you go to throw them out, you break his back mount. Because if you do it ahead of time, they end up getting real stiff when they're in the cooler or wherever you get them from. So then as you're getting ready to put it out, all you do is you push down on it real lightly. And you'll see that like the back raise a little bit. You can almost hear it. And then just get a little wiggle. And it's just me holding this. Look at it. I'm barely doing anything in the water. Now this is a splasher. I'm sorry, this is a swimmer now because it's where the mount is. If you want a splasher, you put it on this underneath here and tie it. Now if you are in weeds are really thick and you can't troll them and you get weeds all over your bait all the time, here's another little trick for you guys. As you pull the hook down a little bit, push it to the side, and poke it up in here. You're going to be like, oh, you can't hook the fish. Well, you do this, you won't catch any weeds at all. Dolphin are aggressive. They're going to rip the baits apart. You will hook them. I've tested it. I thought the same thing when I did this rig, and it works fine. This is only if the weed's really bad and you know they're in the weeds and you can't troll them because it gets their stuff on it. So you skip these across the top of it, and you'll get bites. Now, again, this is just a natural bait, nothing on it. And if you want, of course, obviously you don't tie this on here. You can always do something like this. A lot of people like colors. And simple.
What do you like, Cory?
I'm gonna go.
Naked or
I will tell you in just a second. I will tell you in just a second. But that's a good bait. That's a good bait right there. Like I said,
I was gonna say naked.
this is weedless. So this is what you call weedless, I guess. You know, like bass terms. So weedless. And then, like I said, you can do it with the monos on the bottom for a splasher, or if you put the mono in the middle like that and troll slow. That's slow, meaning like 3.5 to 5 miles an hour. And this will actually swim. It might come up and go down, swim up like that kind of thing. So, and there's simple. And then again, you can either crimp. Since I did a perfection loop on the other one, we'll crimp one on here. Nothing special, just a same crimp. Again, this is 60-pound mono. Always make your loops small. You don't want them too big. You always want them small. It's less drag in the water. And again, always crimp the center. And that way it flares on both ends. So that way you see that. And that's what you want. That's 100%. Okay, so again, this is dolphin fish. So now you got a great rig. Now, this rig with the strip, the lure, you can go 6 to 8 miles an hour. This will be your spread. So that way you can figure out, okay, they're eating strips. Oh, wait a minute, they're eating lures. Or wait a minute, they're eating ballyhoos. And what's going to happen, when they're really biting, they're going to eat all this stuff. But you're going to find that if you're really targeting dolphin, all of a sudden, 2 hours of the day, they're only going to eat strips. 2 hours a day, they're going to eat ballyhoos. And then all of a sudden, you're going to be sitting there, and you're going to keep catching 5-pounders, and just 2 fish, or maybe even 1 fish, a 15-pounder will come up and eat that lure because they like something a little bit bigger. So that's that. Now, Trey was asking me what my favorite bait is, and I'm going to show you right now.
Cory, real quick, we
Yes.
have 2 questions here.
Okay.
One is, for strips, do you like to use single or double hook on your strips?
I like to use singles because it gives the bait more action. Now, if you want to put the strip back further, instead of tying a knot, you can either crimp a loop, which will make, let's see, no, I won't do that. You have to get a little bit longer shank. I'm sorry, I was thinking of keeping your lure on. That's another trick too. So get a little bit longer shank if you want to make it, or cut your strip a little shorter, and that way your hook's a little further. But generally, the dolphin will eat this entire thing no problem. I mean, I've seen them eat bonitas, and they're 8-pounders, you know. So, but single hook, for your question, single hook gives it a lot more action in the water.
Thank you.
And would you put a swivel on top of the hook?
No, I would not.
No swivel.
No swivel. Less hardware, less. Now, here's something also too. Okay, so this strip right now, what's this rig's okay?
So when I said a swivel, like on top of the hook.
Yeah, you're talking about right on eye right there.
Yep.
Yes. No, I would just leave it the way it is. Just that. Yep. Now, guys are gonna notice that different conditions, the baits are gonna work better. So when it's flat calm out, the strip or a splashing ballyhoo will probably outfish this lure because they like stuff that's moving around on top. When it's rough out, they're going to want the lure or the strip, because once you put the strip way back, it'll stay underwater a little bit better because of the action of the water. So that now they can see, because now the bait's almost in the water 100% versus 50% when it's rough, 100% when it's flat. So just something to keep an eye out, stuff like that. Now,
Another question we have is,
yes.
what size hooks are you using for the bonito strip and for the ballyhoo?
Okay, the bonita strip, you can use 6.0s or 7.0 open ones, they call them, or you can get some closed bite ones. So depending on your rig, because sometimes if you're fishing for smaller dolphin or even tunas, you'll go to the smaller hook so you can get the bites and smaller bait purses. But generally, if you stick to a 6 or 7.0 for the strips, you'll be good. And then the ballyhoo typical is 7 or 8, depending on your size of your ballyhoo. And I like the open ones for the ballyhoos because you get more hook exposure. Okay, so one more rig for the dolphin is, I'll show you. Now I'm going to do for the knot tying people. So again, you can crimp if you want, but if you don't, I usually make it like a granny knot to start with. So that's all it is to start with. So what you're going to do is take this rig, hook, 1/2 ounce lead, take that line and go through there like this. Now what's nice about this loop knot, I'm not 100% sure what name it's called, I just call it a loop knot. You can make a loop as big as you want. I generally make it as close as I can to that lead. So like right around there. So then what you do is you take the tag in and go around half hitches like 3 times. And pull in a 1/2 hitch to your knot loop there. And once it's down to where you want it, so it looks like kind of like that. Okay, and all I do is trim off the tag end. So here's where you take nose wire, and I'll sometimes pinch it a little bit like that towards the end of the knot, because that's where you're going to end up rigging. You just take it around. Well, hopefully you guys can see that. All I'm doing is wrapping around this really tight. So then it kind of closes that off just a little bit. That way it's nice and easy to rig through the ballyhoo. Okay. You take this end here, just wrap around one more time like that, and now this is basically your pin. This could be for your ballyhoo. Okay, so again, here's the process again. All right, here's a perfect example. See how the fins are poked the other way? Since both of them are that way, what happens is, the reason you take them off too is because if you don't take them off, see, there's a little pressure. So when it goes in the water, it's going to want a tendency of making it spin. So then I usually take those right off. Like again, you just grab it with your finger strength, twist them off, or take a pair of pliers, scissors and cut them off. Now you're making a swimmer, so you peel it back a little bit so it peels back like that. And you can go in any process, whatever is easiest for you. I do so many of them, I do them different ways. So usually if I'm using a knife right there, I cut that. And then I'll do that. Pull the eyes out. Again, getting all the crap out of them.
That part of the process makes it real loose.
Yes. And now since I'm going to do this now again, you don't break their backbone until you get ready to put them on, but since we're doing this, I'll do it right away. Just to show you what they're going to look like. Once you break their backs, wiggle them up a little bit, but you can see how wiggle loose they are. And I'm not even doing anything. I mean, when you start putting them in the water and give them a little speed, those things almost like they're straight. And just so you guys know, like when you're looking for baits, the baits they have here are awesome. And you can look for the orange tails, clear eyes, and how silver they are. And also look on the bottom. If you see a lot of green poop on the bottom and stuff like that, they're fresh caught and they're packaged right. And they'll last. That's the whole key. You want them to last. I mean, when you go to places like Dominican Republic, for example, and you're rigging 100 baits a day, you don't want any of them to go bad because so many got to rig.
So yellow tails, green poop, clear eyes,
yes.
Nice silver finish.
Yes. Okay, so now, again, same thing. Measure out where that knot's going to kind of be, which is going to be right there. Now what's nice about this is because it'll stick a little further back. slide that up. All I'm doing is wiggling this up. Here's another trick. The biggest thing, guys, is push this lead up in this gill plate. Take this up here. Ooh, got a stubborn one here.
Want to go through that other flat?
Yes, going through the top there. And I had
You'll fish a variety of baits at the same time.
You can. If you want to dry some mullet or bonita strips or stuff, whatever.
You do a combo of ballyhoo and strips?
Yes, that's what I was saying. When you want to troll them, you have a strip. I mean, if you're by yourself, this 3-rod system is awesome. You get a lure down the middle, a ballyhoo on one side, and a bonita strip on the other side. So that way, you got 3 rods. You can figure out what they're biting on. Again, you'll see that sometimes in early mornings they'll want bait. As the sun comes up a little bit more, depending on the conditions of the sea, they'll want a lure, something a little bit bigger, so they can see it. All right, so whole trick to this, guys, is. You have a question? Yes.
Yeah, the question is, how do you get rid of squid smell on your hands?
Lemon juice.
I've read it before.
Lemon juice. Lemon juice works really well. All right. So right now, guys, let's just got to ask a kind of interesting question, but okay, we're on our way back to rigging. So the biggest thing is you want to make sure this lead is tucked up as tight as it can be. All right.
Who asked that question?
Was that Eric?
Yeah.
Jeff's cut off. No more questions.
No more questions. All right. So I'm just rigging this up tight, guys. And again, you can actually peel this back even more if you wanted. So.
Do you use a teaser bait when you're trolling?
You can if you have an extra, teaser reels on a boat or anything like that. You can, yes. That's great. Most of the time, you don't really need it for dolphin fishing. Now, if you're bill fishing, yes. All I'm doing, guys, is rigging it like we did before. Push the hook down, and you can see. You see how the lead's all tucked up in there. And that's another reason why you take the eyes out. See how it's all about stitching. You don't want anything loose. You gotta remember, when you're rigging, you want to make sure it stays in there tight, because your bait will look perfect for like 2 or 3 minutes, and as it moves and wiggles, things loosen up, then all of a sudden your bait starts to swim out of the side. These baits are going to swim like this. If they don't, then there's something wrong. Okay? And I got so many compliments of the baits that we rig on our boat, and they look at them going, "Is that live?" I go, "Nope." And they go, "You sure we didn't buy any of those?" "Nope. No, that's the way they rig them." But this is my number one bait, a simple, natural swimming rigged ballyhoo. We'll outfish any of this stuff for Mahi.
We have a comment. Not a question.
Oh, sorry.
We have Jeremiah Ports says the man, the legend. I don't know if you know Jeremiah, but he's a
I do. Thank you. This is our Redneck TV here. We're on fire. So anyhow, good to see you, buddy. So this is that, and then also too, if you want, easy, simple. You got a naked swim balance. If you want a swimmer with a skirt on it, you can go the extra step, throw a skirt on it if you want. Now again, I'm just picking blue and white right now because of the flyers that are around. So. And even though you're trying to target dolphin with these things, you'll see that you'll fish or catch a lot of sails on this, bonitas and stuff like that. Now, I don't know if you guys know, but the reason too is you go with long shank hook, because if you get a chance to eat, wahoo eats this on mono, at least you might have a chance of them get hooked without cutting you off right away, because the hook's a little bit longer. I mean, that's why I like shank. And also, you can see how far back it is. I mean, how can you pass that up? I mean, I'd eat that thing, It's just, so. But anyhow, so that's it. And then you put your little perfection loop on, or crimp, whatever you're easiest with. It all depends. The perfection loop knot, which is I showed you that before, that's 100%. It doesn't break. And if you want to do the crimps, as long as you crimp it right the way I taught you, you will have no problems with that either. So this is dolphin fishing 101 here. This is very basic. I gave you a lot of quick tricks of the trade as far as swimmers without leads, with a line going through their bills, splashers, the weedless one, strips, and the lures, but this is very, 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 very good for what you want to target.
All right, so since we're wrapping up the dolphin section, we'll give like 30 seconds, 60 seconds for anybody that has a question on dolphin fishing. Since we're getting into dolphin season, the weed lines are starting to form out there. Anybody that has a question, go ahead and type it up, and we'll get it over to Cory here quick.
Focus on that camera. We'll focus on that.
Okay, you got it. That's too small. No, I'm just kidding.
You want more zoom?
No questions here.
Okay, no
All right.
questions.
Well, I guess I explained myself.
That you're fishing.
For dolphin? So it's kind of varies. I mean, right now there's a few around in shallow, 75 to 200 feet, because there's a lot of bait around. And as Trey was saying, as weed lines start to show up more in June, July, and August, you're going to be out anywhere from 500 to out to about 1,200 feet of water. So it's kind of all depends. And then obviously the best winds for that are going to be out of east quadrants. You don't want to really fish for dolphin out of west quadrants unless you're in on a reef, because they just don't bite. And everything that's offshore that's lined up, if there's anything, ends up splitting apart and it becomes a big mess.
To remind everybody that the pilchards and sardines and
I haven't got to that part yet.
Inlet right now, everything is close to shore, so right now go fishing is an epic time because all the bait's in shallow. We recorded a couple Mahi catches at 75 feet. So even Mahi fishing right now, so the depth of Mahi fishing varies because all the bait is in shallow. So
For anybody that doesn't know, this is Goddess Lisa. She's my other half, my better half.
Goddess behind Goddess Charter.
That's it. She's my better half.
She likes white wine, by the way, if anybody wants to send her a gift.
And probably Eric's got fish too, so we're
So,
good.
so on a Saturday morning,
Yes.
what is the key to catching the mahi? Is it being the first one to the weed line?
Yes.
So for those that like to go to the
Dilly
bar
dally,
Friday
yes.
night, you got to get up early.
Now here's the thing that people don't understand too is like, okay, so this happens. It's happened to me. I'll be honest. It's happened to many people. You get up early, get out there at 6:30, and you're running offshore. Problem with being that early is sometimes you miss the weed lines or the edges, so you'll go right past it, not seeing it, unless you know for a fact, hey, someone told me it was in 500 feet of water, and you kind of look for it. So there's times where we've run past it, and everybody's like, hey, oh man, we went too far, and we had to come all the way back. So keep in mind, try to do the 7 o'clock type thing, so at least you can see a little bit, because then when the sun's up, you can say, oh, and then other than that too, if you don't see weed lines, let's say you see a piece of debris, it's a little early for fish to be on it.
Can't see the birds.
You can't see the birds, you can't see the debris, or even if you find debris that early in the morning, they're not going to be on it, because it seems like they like the sun to have a little activity.
Do you have preferred color skirts depending on if it's cloudy, overcast versus being sunny?
If we have clean water, I like fishing black and purple. It's one of my favorites. It works in dark, light, everything, and it works great. Again, though, another good color, like here's a really good color with this particular lure, is blue and pink. Is another good color for dolphin. And of course, they'll eat anything, as everybody knows. They'll eat, but over time, when you see the colors, I don't know if you guys saw the Wahoo seminar. If you pay attention to your colors, you're going to figure out what colors work best for the bigger fish.
What about dirty water versus clear water?
Dirty water, you still like blue and pink would be a good one for dirty, or pink and white. And sometimes there's one that's called the Ghost. It's glow in the dark skirt or white type thing. But what's nice about this one, if you had to pick one color, this is a universal one. This will work in both colors.
Now, your preference, let's say you're at 400 feet and the water still looks a little dirty. Will you keep going deeper to find clean water?
I would. If I know there's some dolphin around, yes, because they like that cleaner water. Because generally when the cleaner water is around, you're going to have current. And the current brings in all the nutrients, and that's usually when you see that blue, purple water like everybody likes to see. And then, of course, if there's weed, that's where it's going to be at.
Somebody asked about a double hook ballyhoo rig.
If you can do that. It's a little harder to do. I mean, the only thing that you would do different in this particular rig is you'd get a hook that matches so it goes over this hook very easily, not where you have to punch it on there. So let's say a little bit bigger. So then what you have to do if you're going to do that aspect is you'd measure where this would be popped out here, for example. You slide this up. I could probably do it right in this one. Yeah. You slide this up like this, and you kind of feel your way to the eye of that hook, and it'll slide right through, and that's how your double hook rig will look once it goes through there. But again, you got to make sure that this goes through there so easily, otherwise you're going to be fighting with it and you're going to rip your bait apart if you want to do a double hook one. But you are better off with a single because you're going to get a lot more bites, a lot more action of it. But again, if you're one of those people that like the double hook, then that's fine. Rig that thing and you can just kind of leave it back there and forget about it. These other ones, sometimes you have to drop back a little bit, let them eat, but this will outfish the double hook any day.
Coming from Cory, single hook outfishes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I'm trying to think of anything else for dolphin fishing.
Real quick, do you want to touch base on why a double hook opposed to a single hook swims differently in the water and a hookup ratio?
Well, we
as
could.
opposed to a single hook?
So, Goddess Lisa was asking or mentioning about the double hook. The reason too is, so if you have a single hook, you're going to see the action out of it. Okay. As soon as you put two hooks in there, it's going to be so stiff and stuff. It's not going to swim as well. And just to throw a safety issue in there, the double hooks. The problem with double hooks too is sometimes you get those dolphin on those double hooks and they start brown swimming. It's happened to me when I was 18 years old. Thing we flap around trying to grab a dolphin, and now all of a sudden this other hook swings out and it snags you in your arm. You got the dolphin on the other hook, flopping around, and I can show you scars from it. But that's what generally happens when you're in a hurry trying to get your favorite lure out or whatever like that. And next thing you know, he's in your arm and you're doing this trying to get him off your arm, and then you got to rip him out. Anyhow, it's safer with a single.
But you can obviously see the action difference.
See the action difference, yes. I mean, look at this.
Just to attract the fish.
Yes. Again, this is my number one. I like to swim in ballyhoos. So, all right. So, if there's any other questions on dolphin fishing,
Somebody just asked about outriggers. If you have to have outriggers to fish,
you do not.
you don't have to have outriggers.
No. We don't even have any on our boat, and we do fine.
You guys are the pros.
But they are nice because you can put more rods out if you have them. So don't get me wrong, they are nice. You can use them to your advantage, of course. But if you don't have them, it's not a big deal. You can still fish 4 rods comfortably, no problem.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about being ready to drop a bait back after a short strike?
Okay, so if you get a dolphin comes up there and you know it's a dolphin, for example, he's going to come up there and grab it. And then let's say, all right, if he's in an outrigger, it's going to pop out. May come tight, may not. So you come back, and what's going to end up happening is when they grab it, if your bait's really good, they're going to grab the bait and slide off your bait, and then you still probably have a whole bait, or if not, 3/4 of bait. So when that happens, the best thing to do is you wind it up a little bit, get a little more action out of it, and just sit there and wait. And if he comes, and if you feel something, drop back for like 3 or 4 seconds. Or if they're a little hesitant about it, wind it really fast and just free spool it real quick. Because as they see it moving and it just starts to sink and float back, they're going to come back and just inhale the whole thing because they're like, oh, I just wounded it and I'm going to finish it off and just eat it. So that'll be the 2 quickest and easiest ways. Now the strip, if they hit a strip, for example, there's no really drop back in a strip because they're going to inhale it, they're going to mow it. So what you do is you just kind of jig it really light, and as soon as you feel them, grab it, just rod tip them really quick towards the fish, and then pull back. And then that'll give them enough time to turn their heads, and you'll be able to hook them, especially in the strips. And then the lures are a little different. They usually crash them or they don't. The lures, you kind of wind. You can drop back a smidge. I mean, it's almost like a one drop and then lock it back up type thing. But most of the time, they'll hook themselves on the lures, especially if you rig them or get them rigged so the hook's a little bit further back. Because generally, most fish will come up from behind and eat it or from the side. So, and that way it's in his mouth like that. Okay, any other questions?
If you see a frigate bird out there, would you want to get in front of the frigate bird, or where would you line up if you see it moving?
Okay, so if you're looking for birds, that's a good question.
If it's circling, but it's moving.
Yes. Okay, so you guys got to be kind of like patient with it. Don't just race up and get right in the middle. And now the only way that's going to work is if you have live bait. I mean, if you have live bait, you race up, kind of see where the birds are going. You throw live baits out, and you'll probably have a shot. But if you're trolling, you kind of have to watch the bird and how it's going. You don't want to ever go through them. You want to kind of go around them because that way the fish are traveling, the birds follow them. And if you time it just right where you're swinging around as the bird comes by you, you're going to get a bite almost 9 out of 10 times. But it's a matter of timing it and watching how the fish go. Now, sometimes, yes, you'll be following him, everybody's going good, and all of a sudden he just darts off and he's gone. So in that case, the fish generally will go down and they're gone for a while, and then you just got to wait or just look for another set of birds. But if you can time it where you can get out in front of them, That's the key. Don't run through the middle of them because it pushes them down, but you get around them because that way they're not spooked. You'll get more multiple hookups that way. That's a good question.
I think similar to tuna, you don't want to spook.
Exactly. Tuners are even worse because they are boat shy, and you want to set stuff way back most of the time.
You don't want to spook them.
Right.
Run up real hard on the fish.
Exactly.
Corey, another question we have is how tight should the drag be?
It all depends on what you're fishing. If you're fishing anywhere from 10-pound test on up to 50-pound, just make sure it's, usually the recommended 33% of the line is what your drag should be set at. If you set at that for dolphin fishing or anything else, I always set it a couple pounds lighter than that. That way you're good. If you're catching a lot of small fish, you don't want the drag too tight. You end up pulling them so hard that they fly out of the water and come off. So the biggest thing is that way you just keep the drag set up.
Perfect. Another question we have is if they buy rigged ballyhoo, do they have to do this dismembering steps that you talked about earlier?
No, they are pretty much ready to go because they're already rigged. So no, you'll just have to, if anything, maybe break their back if they're not broken. But if they're already rigged, then boom, that's all you have to do.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Is that any other questions for dolphin?
Do we have any other questions for dolphin?
You have a question?
I was going to touch on the drag. On the drag on our swimmers, when we are pulling swimmers behind the boat, we're super, super light drag. We've got the clicker on, we've got the drag in just a smidgen, because on a swimmer, when the Mahi comes around to bite, it's like Cory said, sometimes they'll come around to eat half the fish, real specific and real specific. Come around, eat it, drop back a little bit, and if the drag's real light, they'll come around, pick up the other half of the remaining bait and run off with it. If they come around, pick up half the bait, Mahi this time of year, Mahi year-round seem to want like game sports, so we're trolling a little faster for Mahi. But if you keep the drag really light on your swimmers, and you have that clicker on really light, just barely up, and you can pull it out, you can hear that click. That way, that gives the fish a little round. When we're pulling bugs with strips on them, we lock it up because there's just no going back. But when, because the strips, we run strips that are kind of like medium to short. But when we're pulling swimmers, drag's super, super light, and we don't push it up all the way.
And it all depends on your speed as well. Right. So if you're going fast, obviously the drag's up a little bit more. And like she said, if you want to leave it a little bit lighter, so that way you have a chance to get to it. If you're by yourself, then you can. But
if you leave it a little lighter, it doesn't pull the bait out of their mouth, right?
Correct. See, another thing, if you guys want to go like the full step into doing this whole thing, which I don't even do this because it's just too much work. After doing all this, before you do all this, if you descale these things, then the fish will not be able to grab it and slide off. They'll actually hold on to the bait, you let them eat it, and then they can catch it. But I'm sorry, but I don't do that. It's just too much work. I mean, if they're you get good enough with it where if they miss it, at least it gets them antagonized even more to eat it again.
Customers that'll do it for sure.
If they're going to do that, then knock all the scales off, because then what happens is they'll actually grab the bait and it won't let go.
Right.
So then they'll go off swimming off with it, and then you can free spool it and then let them eat and do whatever. But I don't go that extra step because I get too many baits of rig, and it would take me years to get all. I mean, it's like
How far back from the boat should your bait be?
okay, if you're fishing the three hook spread, let's say the bonita strip, ballyhoo, and lure, fish the bonita strip probably like 150 to 200 feet back. Do your ballyhoo probably about 125 to 150 feet, and then your lure is going to be up close. It'll be almost like your teaser, but has a hook in it, so it'll be like 75 feet to 100 feet, depending on the boat, of course. My bait box is usually a lot neater than this, guys. I swear. But anyhow, this is some of the rigs that you guys can see.
This is what Cory's Saturday night consists of.
Yes. And when we're in fishing wahoo tournaments and all that stuff, Goddess Lisa's helped me rig lures up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning so we can get up at 4.
Yay!
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Exciting.
And the reason is because number one, we don't really have a place to rig them on the boat because we're usually going outboards. And when you're doing really well in tournaments, you don't want people to see what you're doing, so we take them back to the room and rig them up. And by the time you get done with cleaning up, showering, dinner, all that stuff, everybody's done and disappeared at 11 o'clock, we're up rigging our stuff so we can, and hence top female angler in the Wahoo tournament this year, and we did very well. So anyhow.
Colors are a big thing.
So.
Did you win a big Wahoo tournament this year?
Yes. Top lady female angler right there. So, but anyhow, this is the dolphin stuff. I think this is an. I mean, shoot, I might even take this for the boat. But anyhow, looks really good.
We're gonna do a little afternoon trip.
Yeah, we got time. So, any more dolphin questions?
How do you store your pre-rigged baits?
Pre-rigged, that you're gonna rig them, and then for the night before, or.
I just go over both.
Okay, so.
They can't answer.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so if you're gonna have baits rigged up, you're gonna rig them the night before. Just basically, it's simple. Cooler, put a little ice in it. Put tin foil on there, so you don't want the ice to burn the baits. Actually, I know people don't find that crazy, but or sitting in water because it softens them. Or a tray with a hose is even better. You put the baits in there. Don't salt them. Because all it does is burn the baits. They're fresh baits. And so when you're doing that, I mean, if the hook's like that, it's simple. Just lay them like this. You know, nothing special. Just keeping them nice and neat. You just got to remember, when they're all balled up like that, sometimes they'll get bacteria and all that stuff. So if you space them out, have a little air and let them sit there, they'll last a good day or so. Now, if you're rigging them and then going to freeze them type thing, if you have a vacuum seal, just rig them up, vacuum seal them up, put them in the freezer, and pull them out whenever you need them. Or sometimes you can take a gallon-sized Ziploc, put the rigs, including the mono. Everybody's going to ask, well, you can put mono in the freezer, put it in there. Just tuck the bag in the water, get all the air out, and then you can put them in the freezer. And then it's we call it like the Polish way of doing it, but it works.
I don't think a lot of people know that trick.
It works really well. So.
The other reason you want to spend a few more seconds on, making your tackle box really clean and neat while you're rigging your bait, you have all the time in the world. Sitting around, you're squeezing out the air bladder, you're peeling out eyeballs, you're doing a few things, you're laying in nice and neat, you coil up your leaders, and I know there are a few people out there that have got on a mess of Mahi, and then all of a sudden it's like
Chaos.
mad mayhem.
Chaos,
You go
yeah.
in to reach into your tackle box and your tackle and your bait isn't organized, you're gonna come in, you're gonna get a snag, you're gonna get a hook. All of a sudden the hook on one bait has catched the leader on another. You're just trying your hardest to get a pitch bait out there, and if you don't have it nice and neat, it sounds kind of simple and feminine, but organize your tackle box, reach in really quick and simple, throw on another one, pitch bait while it's out there. If you got that spool behind you, and if it's easier for you to grab in, pitch, boom, grab in, pitch, boom, as opposed to a big mess, you can lose the bite.
Absolutely.
And she mentioned about like a school of dolphin. So I tell you, I touch on something real quick. Most people sometimes don't realize is that if you're trolling for fish and there's a school back there, all the rods come down. There's a perfect example. All the rods come down. Now there's a school of fish back there. Most people will sit there and stop and do all this. Well, what's going to happen? These fish are traveling. The reason they're biting troll stuff is because they're traveling. So with that being said, is when you have a fish on, the best thing to do is it works when you have two people, unless you have a perfect turn or a flat calm day.
Is this a weed line situation? Or
No, non-weed line situation. So these are fish that are traveling out in the open. Just keep the boat going. But what you do is when you get a fish on, is you put the boat in a hard turn. Let the boat kind of circle them, because what it does is whatever fish you have on, the school is going to follow them, and then you can kind of corral them and keep them in one spot. So while you're doing that, now this is only if you have 2 or 3 people on board. If you're by yourself, it's very hard to do. But you give 2 or 3 people on board, you got 4 rods on, let's say. And I always seem like I always have a spinner. You get a chunk ballyhoo or whatever, and just cast it. I will guarantee you'll get another fish on it. And then what's nice is that spinner rod, when you get a fish on there, let that one sit. That's your what do you call it? Decoy. Thank you. That holds them there. You bring the other tackle in, that's a little heavier tackle, and you bring those dolphin in. Then you can start, if you keep that circle going, you'll keep them interested, and you can kind of bail the dolphin when there's schools of them like that.
So you leave one in.
Yes.
Put another bait out. Get another one in. Bring him in.
Yes. Always keep a fresh one out. Yes. Always keep a fresh one out, and that's what will keep the school. And if you do it right, you can catch the whole school as long as they're biting. There's days that they're traveling, and I'm sure everybody says the same thing. Oh my God, say the whole school, and they're not biting. So the reason they're not biting is 2 reasons. Is that obviously the pressure's changing and this and that, or they want something that's fast. So even though you're trolling and you're not going fast enough, if you get a jig or something like it, cast over towards them and start jig, 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 you'll get them fired up, and then you can catch 3 or 4 real quick, and then all of a sudden they slack off again. You go back to that jig again. So you kind of tease them and change things up a little bit, and that way you can catch the whole school if hopefully you can. But
I've been in
And
that.
keep it in gear. Keep it in gear if you can. Keep it in gear.
Yeah.
They like that game.
I've been in that exact situation where we got a couple dolphin on, and we had the chunk baits out. They weren't touching them. I took a whole squid, put it on my hook, casted it out, skipped it across the water.
exactly.
Actually, we couldn't get past the bar jacks.
Oh yeah, because they
So
come up
I
there.
threw it out there, skipped it across, and the dolphin could keep up with it, but the bar jacks couldn't get to it. So sometimes you got some of that trash fish around the weed line.
Exactly. And then, you know, I've never seen them ever turn down a swimming mullet in my career. And it's a little trick, but sometimes when they're all like lazy and you're trying everything, and just like Trey said, you cast this swimming mullet past everything and just whine as fast as you can, I will guarantee you'll get them on. And then once one eats, it just kind of fires up everybody else. And now you got to be real selective though. You can't feed them all perfect mullets because then that's all they ate and then you run out, that's it. So you kind of like trick them. You get one, eat one, and you start throwing chunks or a jig, and then you'll catch a couple, and then you do it again, and just kind of keep the circle going. And that way you'll get them all to bite, especially big
Do
fish.
you throw a chum bag out if you get a school around, or what do you do?
If you have a school down, most people just aren't going to have chum with them, but you will have some ballyhoos with you for dolphin fishing. So always cut up like a little tray of ballyhoo chunks. Have some that you're going to waste, throw out just to give them around the boat. You don't want to overfeed them because that way you'll get full. You throw that, boom, you get some chunks ready to go, and you got your spinners or whatever you're going to use to catch them, and now keep them going.
So what I'm hearing is that it's not that you hook up a fish and then all of a sudden you think about what you're going to do. You have a system already in place on how it's going to go down.
Yes.
So you have your bait pre-cut, you have your ballyhoo, you have your pitch rod ready to
Ready to go.
throw
Everything's got
down.
to be ready to go, yes.
So you have your system down. So I think the key is don't get surprised when you actually get a fish on.
Right.
You know, it hasn't happened the last 4 times, but now you got.
Yeah, because you start getting lazy, and instead of bringing 12 rods, now you're down to 4, and all of a sudden you're like, holy crap, you got all these rods all busy. And I will tell you from experience that, you know, when I used to commercial fish for dolphin, all right, we had 12 spinner rods with bailing rigs on every one of them, had my spares, so we'd cast out, get a fish on, and you dehook or do whatever you need to do, but you have to be ready for these because you're going to have a split second. And if you do it right and you do like I was telling you, get them in a turn, keep things going, and just always cast inside the turn, not outside the turn, guys. Inside the turn, because that's where your fish are going to be at. You're gonna do very, very well. I mean, very well.
Another question that we have is there ever a time you would use a downrigger for dolphin?
Okay.
Maybe rough seas or?
No, because most dolphin will feed on the top, but I can't. What I would use would be a rod with a lead. You know, sometimes just that little bit below the surface, even though it's not much, only maybe a foot or two, because you're going 6, 7, 8 miles an hour. You'll get some of them bigger dolphin eat that. And the only other time that I've seen them eat down deep is if you're marking them on the machine, and I've actually marked them on the machine and caught them with planers. But that's just a freak thing. I already had the planers out anyways. And I go, oh look, there's dolphin here. But most time when that happens, they're in on the reef feeding on the baits that are down real steep. But if you're gonna see them, if you can mark them on your machine out deep, the only other thing I can suggest is maybe try a butterfly jig or a jig like that if you get on top of them right away. But downrigger, it's a little tough with downriggers.
I've trolled downriggers with fresh ballyhoo, but caught wahoo.
Yes.
Not dolphin, but the dolphin were up top. They were hitting the riggers.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
They seem like they like the action because you think about this, guys. They're if they're not eating sardines, but their main diet is flying squid, which I don't know if anybody's seen them out offshore, but there is some, and flying fish. So that stuff's on the surface. And these dolphin, when the flying fish are up in the air, they're actually swimming on their sides and look up. So they're always looking up for stuff. So that's why generally you get more bites on them up towards the top.
So being the wahoo guy, would you put something down a little?
Oh yeah,
lower?
absolutely. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh. The wahoos, are going to be down a little bit deeper.
Is that it for dolphin? I don't know. Dolphin's one of the most exciting.
They are very colorful, jump.
She just started because if you find something floating and you're normally dolphin fishing, you should have a vertical jig rig for wahoo on it.
Yes. Now what's sad is that
Starting something different.
right. No, that's fine because what's sad is that years ago all you needed was a lead.
Right.
All we used was a pink spoon. Went around this, and we would catch all the wahoos there, no problem. Now, because everything's a little deeper, the temperature's a little different, now it seems like the vertical jigs are working very well. I mean, and it's almost like you have to rig them on mono in order to get bites. You know, I'm sure everybody gets cut off, but you get your fish on them too. So another cool thing too is if you get those giant rapalas, those things work really well as well. You know, you get them out there and you slow like you're snook fishing almost, yeah, and they'll bite those things too. So.
We have one more question.
Yes.
Does radar really help?
If you're looking for birds, yes. Not for dolphin fishing.
Not for frigates.
No. Because there would
For
usually,
tuna's different.
yes, because there's a big school of birds, so it can mark on a machine, and one frigate is not, unless your machine's special, then I've never seen it do it.
And Star is calling you the dolphin whisperer.
Okay, anything else for the dolphin?
I think that's it.
Okay.
You'll have to tune in next time for the rest.
Yes. Okay, so we're moving on to tunas now. I know everybody's excited about tunas because it's the big blackfins are starting to show up. We actually had one on today that took half a spool of braid out,
Yeah.
and before it broke the leader. I mean, it was. I almost think we snagged the bottom. It was going so fast, and unfortunately we didn't get them. But we caught some tunas earlier in the week, some nice blackfins, ranging anywhere from 10 to 25 pounds. So there've been some decent ones around. So what we'll get into is, well, there's a couple ways you can fish for them. Probably the most productive, if you're in the right area, is actually live baiting. I mean, you can get some pilchards, do the kite fishing, or drifts, and you know it's going to be either early morning or late in the afternoon type bite. And so, but if you can't get live bait and you're getting off from work or whatever the case may be, a couple things will work really well. Again, a swimming ballyhoo will work really well, and I've always done very well with a naked swimming ballyhoo for blackfins. I mean, you can try colors, but I've always done better with that. Some of the easy ones, I mean, even though it's a small little feather, these feathers work really well. And again, blue and white for right now because of the flying fish. You can rig this up again like you did the strip. It can either be by itself or put a strip on the back of this stuff. And now these are made to go fast. So you want to go 8, 9, maybe 10 miles an hour, especially if you see birds. These are more designed for bird fishing. Now, if you're targeting where there's nothing out there, you just know there's bait and there's some tunas in the area, then you can fish the strips like this, way back. Or, another thing too is everybody knows how to planer fish. If you don't, then it's a little bit heavier tackle. Get your set up. Got a number 4 planer. Number 6 planer seems to be my favorite for right now because everything's eating high. So you get your rod set up. And very simple, they got all these rigs here. Blue and white and blue, pink and white and blue and white have been working really well. And very simple, you can use either a double hook or a single hook, depending on what your style is. I like single hooks, it gives the bait, again, more action. And you fish these things way back. Number 4, usually it's generally on, well, probably about 300 feet back. And then the shorter one, probably about 150 feet back. And these are long leaders. So as you're trolling the reefs and stuff, you cover the reefs anywhere from 75 to 200 feet of water, and you're trolling planers, and you'll get the bigger ones down deep if you're not marking birds and see them skyrocket and that kind of thing. But
What's your preferred length between planers to the bait?
100 feet
100
for around here. Now, you can shorten up when you go to islands because they're not as spooky as they are here, and you can actually beef up the leader. So some of these leaders can range anywhere from 60 to 80 pound leaders, which is what this, I think this is probably feels about 80. So here's one of the rigs they have here, which is an awesome rig. And you can get different colors, of course, and the same idea. These things, there you go. If you use a double hook, for example, you're going to, in case you guys don't know how to do it, you take that, you just, very simple, just take the point on it, go to the very tip. So you got one part, measure out the bend of the second one. Very simple. And then this will sit over top of like this. And this, look, I already caught something.
You're already catching
Oh man, that's how good this rig is.
deadly.
So as this goes flares over like this, it'll cover up all that, and that's what it's going to look like, guys. Spend a little more time, I can make it perfect. So it was basically tighten the eye down, straighten this out. Now some people like to leave them off like that. I usually will bend them back so you have just a normal. These I can do this with this. Usually bend it back. And then my other trick too is I'll take this and actually bend it in just a little bit. So once this is bent down a little bit more, you just wrap this around like you did like the pin rig. All right, this is for the single hook rig, for the strip. And then you put get your pin, just like before. I'm gonna steal this strip real quick, show you guys. And then, as everybody knows, this is like a universal rig. You'll catch kings, you'll catch everything on this thing. But lately, the tuna's been deep, so you make your mark, and it goes through like that. Same thing with the bend of the hook. Measure it all out, and it sits just like that. Okay. Again, it's going to sit like this in the water. Now, the reason I like the long shank and single hook, like I just showed you with the double hook, you get a fish on here, folds these things up. You end up turning around and cutting you off. These, they bite on it. When they turn their head, the hook's actually going to go with their heads. It's going to go like this. So you have, instead of catching like 4 or 5 out of 10 for toothy critters, you'll get 9, maybe 100%, depending on the day. Now, of course, you're always going to get cut off no matter what, because sometimes if you go in a turn, they're going to come shooting across there and have their mouths wide open. But this will enable you to catch more wahoos and bigger kings than most, because it helps you keep the hook from they'll spit it out. Helps you keep them from cutting you off on your leader. This is what's been working. This, for most of the time this time of year, you get a nice shock cord, your down rods, which generally are getting down anywhere from 30 to 50 feet, depending on how far back you put them. So sometimes you'll be marking them on your machine. They can be down 45 feet, down to 100 feet. Generally, most fish, if you mark them anywhere from 60 feet up to the surface, they're going to get a bite out of them. If they're any deeper than that, you will not get a bite out of them, out of trolling anyways. Now, that's where maybe you can try a vertical jig, and that will work. Or putting down a live bait a little bit deeper if you have one. But this is a very easy way to do stuff, because if you're, like I said, most people don't have time to go catch bait to get off from work in the evenings, for example, and they just want to go out for a couple hours. So if you have stuff like this ready to go, your couple planer rods and a couple feathers or a strip way back, your odds of catching tuna are going to be very, very good. I'm just trying to think of anything else that would help with the tuna department. And obviously, you mess around with colors. I mean, pink and white, pearl and white, green and white. It all depends on the water conditions. Like I said, this week it's been one of my favorites. Has been something like this. You get a little mylar with a little blue over top of it, on top of your bonita strip, and it's been working great. And something else too, they're feeding on, the flyers are small this week, so make sure your strips are small. Don't make them too big, because they're not, you might catch a few fish, but they're feeding on small baits, just to let everybody know. So I'm just trying to think of anything else I could touch with tunas. Tunas is like.
Tunas. I want to tell them
Do
the
the
characteristics.
what about live baiting for tuna, like trolling pilchards or drifting for pilchards?
Okay, so that is a good question. So it depends on the current. If you have a lot of current, the best thing to do is drift. So you can cover ground. You figure out if there's a little bit of wind, you can put a sea anchor out, or you can also put a kite out, because they'll eat baits on the surface as well. Use a lot of fluorocarbon. They're very leader shy. So if you can use circle hooks and get down to like 40 pound, you'll get bites. You just gotta fight them easy, so that way you don't break them off. But unfortunately, you might want to beef it up a little bit, because lately, like Trey was saying, there's been some big yellowfins out of nowhere just show up, and people fight them for 4 or 5 hours and end up breaking them off because they're such light leaders. And you're trying to baby them, and you're so excited about it, and eventually they win. So, but that'd be the best thing is definitely use some fluorocarbon, very leader shy. Try to do as many knots as you can. As far as what I mean by that is don't use swivels and long leaders with more swivels and that kind of thing if you're drifting. Now, kite fishing is different because everything's pretty much out of the water. But if you try to keep it very aerodynamic and not so much hardware in the water, because they're very leader shy, and they can see a lot better, and all of us can actually. So
If you're doing flat lines with live baits, how long of fluorocarbon?
I would say do a wind on leader of about 10 feet on your spinning reel or teal, whatever you got for fishing with, and that way it's just let it drift out there, and you're probably catching a whole bunch of things on that fluorocarbon. And if you can, use some circle hooks because that way you have a better chance because they'll get hooked in a corner instead of sucking it down. So even if you do get a nice fish on or a toothy critter, you hook them in a corner, you'll have a good chance of catching them.
Those bigger fish will frame through that line.
Correct, yes. And sometimes they'll swallow it down because the circle hooks get them right in the corner.
Is there any advantage of using live pilchard versus live ballyhoo?
Yes, pilchards this time of year they're eating small baits. So you're going to catch more in live pilchards.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly is the stainless steel you're using?
The stainless steel.
Oh, it's Manel. It's soft wire.
Oh, okay, yeah, soft Monel wire, 60 or 80 pound. The heavier the better because that way, over time with a 60, if you keep bending back and forth using the same hook, you'll end up breaking it off. But 60 will work fine, but 80 is like the best. And it's real soft and pliable, as you can see.
And can you show the connection of the strip to the eye of the hook?
Okay. Here's one that's rigged on mono. There's that little pin, so it goes through there like that. Does that help? Is that better?
Yeah, you just have to you have to like contrast it. That's the problem.
Oh, okay.
You
All right.
hit your shirt and then it's white.
Here.
Okay. Does that help whoever asked the question? I see what you mean now. Okay. Okay, is there any? Tuna was a little easier to do because they're so it's very much a luck of the draw type thing. Now again, if you see birds, that's when you start fishing small stuff like this, and that's where we're talking about with dolphin fishing for man of war birds. For you see a school of birds, don't go through the middle of them, go around the edges of them, and you'll get bites. And unfortunately with tunas, you have to put stuff way back because they like to feed in wakes. Believe it or not. If there's a wake back there and a bait's coming through it, they love that. So as long as it's back there in the wake, and a wake meaning not up close to the boat, but the wake's behind you as you're coming around on it. So and they love that stuff.
Do you think you could possibly use the same trolling techniques for kayak fishing?
Well, how fast are you're rowing?
That's what.
You could if you can row pretty fast, yes. Because a lot of this stuff's made for, I mean, the best speed for everything is 5 miles an hour or better. Anything smaller than that, it just the bait lollygags and just doesn't look right. If you're going to do a kayak fishing, you're better off live baiting, and then you can move really slow with that, or drift, or do whatever.
What's the perfect circle hook brand and size of filter?
Okay, so you're looking at Mustad, would be a 6.0. Trying to think of that number. It's a it's a black. It's a thin. Make sure it's thin wire because you want thin wire. You don't want anything thick because you're using light tackle. That way, if you have thick wire, it doesn't hook real well. So thin wire will hook the fish. It's a 6.0. It's made by Mustad. It's a black hook. I'm trying to think of the number.
Is it the Demon Perfect?
Yes, that's it. There you go.
Demon Perfect Circle?
Yes, thank you. And make sure it's thin wire, not heavy wire. Thin wire.
Any other questions about tuna fishing on Instagram?
What was the question?
If there is any more questions.
Oh.
I think you touched on the characteristics
Yes.
of a tuna bite. Tunas tend to stay deep, not shallow. It's a quick bite and then a hard run. And that's what I was going to say. I was just mentioning the characteristics.
Yeah,
of the bite.
most
And
tunas.
You already said like ease up, bringing them in.
Oh, one thing I will add as you're talking is if you get one on the planer, because you guys fish the planers tight anyway, so the drag doesn't slip out. You're gonna know right away that you get a nice fish on. This thing's gonna start ripping. The biggest thing is do is just back the drag off a little bit. It gives it a chance to allow the fish to do its thing. The mono's gonna stretch. When the stuff's brand new, you can get away with being a little bit tighter because everything's new. But as you use it and catch them, I mean, today for example, we caught our limit of kings and we had 12, 15 other bites, and we had bonitas, you know, we had this big tuna. And so over time, the leader starts to wear down a little bit. So just keep it in the back of your mind, okay, better back off the drag just a little bit and just take a little more time with it. I mean, right now the sharks aren't bad quite yet, but, you know, they're coming. But in any case, you still want to be able to catch your fish. You don't want to sit here and try to horse them.
That's the only thing I want to add. Characteristics of a tuna bite. If you think you have one on, ease it out.
Mm.
What about black fins that are sitting down on the rest?
The best way to get those is the diamond jigs or the butterfly jigs. And most of the time with those, you have to mark them. I mean, and they'll be in the middle water column. Say, let's say it wrecks 200 feet. They're generally going to be like 100 feet most of the time. You can mark on it unless they're up a little higher or just a smidge lower. But the butterfly jigs, even if you try to drop live bait down to them, it's not as productive as the butterfly because they want stuff moving fast. They're in that phase of things moving fast.
They want sport.
Mm-hmm. They want to kill something.
Yeah, I've noticed going into the summer pattern for, you know, it's going to be a raining season. Tuna you normally catch morning and evening.
Yep.
If it's pouring down and raining, and I'm saying mainly just for tournament purposes, but you're going to have to fish till late evening.
Right.
When it's raining, put your tuna stuff out, 'cause they'll come back up.
That's right, exactly, because they're not shy about that. I mean, it's so funny you say that because, for example, in the Bahamas, okay, people always go, you have to get out early, get out late in the evening, look for the birds. I will tell you from a fact, I don't care what the tide's doing, I don't care what's going on, it could be raining, sunny, or anything like that. You got good baits out and you fish a certain area, especially like, for example, Cat Island and them places like that. Big ones always bite at noon. For some reason, they come up at noon and want to feed for like 30 minutes, and that's it. No matter what the tide's doing. I can't explain it. I don't know why. But so my point is that you can catch them in the middle of the day.
Right. But if it's pouring down raining, you're in the middle of the tournament. You can't buy.
You right.
Have kites up.
Exactly. So you
control the tuna.
right.
They're
gonna
up.
yep. They will.
So some advice for guys fishing the local tournament and the offshore anglers mini series. Let's say early morning they catch their couple of kings, and now they need to look for another species. Give me the exact setup you would do to try to catch some blackfins to get on the board. What depth, if you're fishing a kite with live bait, how would you set up?
Okay, so what I would do is that's a good question because
People are listening now.
I know. So here we go. I've always found that the tunas, when you're live baiting, will bite up till about 10 o'clock. You know, so if you get your kings real early in the morning, you still got that hour window basically to get your tunas. But if you don't, they seem like they bite better trolling throughout the day. So then you troll and cover ground and different depths and that stuff. And now if your tournament ends at 3, you get that 2 to 3 o'clock window that you can live bait, maybe catch them, but most of the time, I've always found, and I'm sure everybody catches them all day long, different times of the day with live baits, but I've always found you catch more of them trolling once that sun comes up a little higher because they start to go down a little bit, and they want something a little more aggressive.
So live bait early. Huh?
Yes, and sometimes a little deeper, sometimes.
I find that bonitas tend to hit in shallower, and maybe the blackfins are a little deeper, or maybe the blackfins are underneath the bonitas.
Okay.
What is your thoughts on?
Okay. Generally, I've always had where you're right. The tunas will be mixed in with the bonitas, but it seems like when the bonitas are in 100 feet of water, I'm just using numbers for example, guys. 100 feet of water, the tunas will be out at 120. They'll be just on the outside of it sometimes. If the bonitas are so thick, you're not going to get to the tunas anyways, so it just doesn't make a chance. So they'll stay on the outside of them. But that's how I've always seen. I mean, it's a perfect example. We were in there trolling the other day looking for tunas, and we were catching bonitas and kings, bonitas and kings and bonitas, and then we caught a sail, and then we're like, we'll go a little deeper. So we went out to 180, and we ended up catching 3 tunas. Nothing real big, like up to 15 pounds, but just I think sometimes they get overwhelmed, and they want their own little space to travel. Now, I could be talking out my butt, but I just feels like that's what it feels like to me. Is that sometimes? Yeah, they move out a little bit. Yep. And I feel like what happens too is throughout the day, you got to think about this too. Is that all right? There's nobody out fishing at night, you know, as there is during the day. So you come out, everything's in close on the reef, feeding. Now, as boats travel and do this and that, and this will be another good example for a weed line. I'll throw this out there as well. So whether you're fishing a weed line or the reef all day long, People have been hitting that area, I mean, if it was me standing, I'd be like, I'm like listen to some guy blowing the lawn. You're going to want to go over here where it's quiet. So they end up moving out a little bit deeper. So don't be scared to go out a little deeper and check things out, because sometimes they'll go out and be in their own little area, especially dolphin fishing. I just thought of this now because everybody's trolling this weed line. I can't tell you how many times I'm like, okay, so everybody's been up and down this weed line. Nobody's doing it. And you're seeing everybody not stop. You go offshore a little bit from them, whether it could be 100 feet, half a mile, and you'll troll on the outside, because sometimes the dolphin will peter out away from the weed lines. They'll wait, they'll do their thing, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, it's time to come back in and look for food, because then now there's less boat traffic. Because, fish get trained. They get used to hearing all these noises. I mean, everybody knows, like, when you're around over in the islands or this tuna fishing like that, sharks hear noise. They come right up to the boat. So I feel like throughout time, fish start to, progress and learn, okay, that doesn't sound right. We better not go in here. But to answer your question, yeah, generally sometimes I feel like the tunas are out a little deeper. So lately they've been a little close, anywhere from 115 to 200 because of all the bait. But again, you're still trying to find that perfect spot.
So if you're trolling for blackfins, you want that line close to the boat or far from the boat?
Far.
Real far.
Yes. I mean, everything's distance.
As far as you can get it, right?
Yeah, without people running your stuff over. Yeah. And then here's the other thing too: is you don't want it too far, because then the bait doesn't look right. It's like that fine line, and so it's like our boat doesn't have much wake. I mean, it's very clean back there, so I can fish them a little closer than most, and that's the whole key, so they can see. But sometimes there's days I have to put it so far back, I look down, it's like half a spool, especially when you're chasing birds, for example. You're like, oh my God, and you get a fish on, and you're like, oh my God, I got a big one on, but sometimes it's just all the line out there. But yeah, you got to fish them way back. They're so
you see
sharp.
the birds crashing, you see the fish jumping. You don't go straight through it.
Correct. You go around them.
Like far around them. Right?
Yeah, you try to give a good distance, because when you make your turn, now you got to think about this, guys. Is that when you make your turn, you got to picture where that sounded good, but anyhow, you got to picture where your baits are at when you make that turn. So if you're making it too tight of a turn and the birds are here, your bait's over there, you want to make a wide turn. So as you make your turn, now your bait's coming through that. So it depends on how far back you put them. So you kind of keep that in mind.
I noticed they dive down a little bit and they'll come back up.
Yes.
As they hear your boat going by.
Correct, and that's
even if you are far away.
That's right. And then I was mentioning about the wake. So when they have a little wake coming through there, sometimes they think there's like a school of fish, and they're coming up, popping this and that. And generally, if you guys watch the birds for the tunas, most of the time when they're popping on top is because there's small fish around, which generally there's pieces of weed around. So when there's pieces of weed around, you can almost kind of like judge where they're going. It's like, okay, this little batch had somebody, they're pop up. You go around and mess around, you might catch a fish or two. All of a sudden they leave, you're like, okay, where'd they go? You kind of keep looking down the line, you'll see other pieces of weed, and then they're going to pop back up because there's little baits, and they feed on those. And I was watching this whole year. It was awesome. I'd be like, okay, I get up ahead of them a half mile, and you find them again, and you end up catching quite a few of them,
And you said that when you see birds setting, you think nothing's there. They're sitting there waiting for the tube to come back up.
Correct, yes.
So don't just drive off.
All right, just kind of wait, kind of work the area a little bit. And then the other thing, too, is obviously, there's a good example for man-of-war birds. When the man-of-war birds are down, the fish are up high. If the man-of-wars are up really high, they're down deep. So, and just kind of keep an eye on them. So is there any? If you can get in a school where they're popping on top and there's nobody around and you're able to sneak up to them and cast them, that you'd have so much fun if you could do that. It's hard here because they're very spooky. That would work definitely in the islands or over in far places like the Dominican Republic, for example, in that kind of areas, because they're not really keened in on the boats quite yet for that kind of stuff. But I would tell you where that will work is we've seen where the bonitas come up the beach and stuff like that. When their whole school, you can cast that stuff in there and have fun with bonitas. Yeah. We've done that many times. That was fun, especially on late tackle. So, but is there any other questions for tuna? Anything that maybe I haven't touched on or you guys are thinking? I think I've gotten everything covered. So.
Bugs, any other lure?
As far as
what's your trolling spread look like when you're trolling for tuna?
For tuna, I would have, if I'm going let's call it like 7-8 miles an hour, I'd have 2 planters down with strip rigs. Depending on the color of the water, you have different colors. I would have a strip way back, a swimmer, up like medium distance, and maybe a feather down the middle, up kind of halfway in between the strip and the value type thing, and that would be my spread. Yeah, because sometimes they're feeding on really small stuff. I mean, there's skirts here that I haven't pulled out, but there's skirts. It might be about this big, okay, really tiny. And people are like, oh, you can't catch. But the biggest thing is that they're feeding on minnows. You gotta remember that, guys. If you ever clean tunas, mostly there's minnows in their bellies. I mean, you'll see a goggle eye every once in a while from somebody's kite. Always minnows though, so you gotta fish small for them, and that's what they like.
Some captains even trim some of those feathers off to make it even smaller.
Even smaller, absolutely. And you know what else might work around here is they definitely work in the islands, the cedar plugs. So just the plain cedar plugs. No color, and a real good trick is what I was taught by a commercial guy is that if you happen to have some fish in a box, let the cedar plug soak in all that fish blood and all that stuff, because that's scent, and it changes color, makes the cedar change a different color in the water. So that works very, very well too.
That was a good trick.
Mm-hmm.
And another really, really, really silly tip that nobody ever thinks of. When they do catch tuna or a kingfish or a wahoo, when you're cleaning your fish, open your fish's stomach. And I know it sounds kind of grody, but look at the contents of your fish stomach. See what they're eating. If there's a bunch of squid in there, obviously they're eating squid. There's a bunch of filters in there, obviously they're eating a bunch of filters. We opened up the stomach, the contents of tuna, and there were a bunch of dogs in there. So just check the contents of your catch. That way the next day you go out, you know what they're eating.
Do you guys ever throw a rig squid in the mix?
Yes. Occasionally, yes, we do.
You actually control them on
skipper on top.
that, and you also control them on the planer. So, but the trick to that is you can't go fast. You gotta go a little bit slower. So, with that being said, that's another little neat, cool trick. Let's see where that hook is at. Okay, so you got this single hook rig here. You take this pin and go through the mantle of the squid, and just measure out your hook and put it on there, and then have your sea witch over top of it. And sometimes when they're only like Lisa said, fishing or eating squid or even shrimp, something to that nature, you fish a squid like that, and they'll work great. And sometimes squid strips will work. You know, you get some nice squid strips because it all depends on what they're feeding on.
Do you need to put a bead in there to keep the squid from sliding down?
No. Once you put this pin in here, it kind of sits right on here.
Oh,
Yeah, and no problem. It's just, and it looks really good. And I'll throw this out there, and don't be scared to use it. I mean, you don't want giant squids. You want like deep drop squids or like this big, which I'm sure they have here at the shop, but about like that. And you'll catch kings on them. I've caught
one. Enough to get the hook down to the tentacles there?
No, just before it. Get that way you have the tentacles, a little bit of action. Yep. And I've caught a lot of other fish on it.
Again, a single hook.
So just a couple little tricks. But I'm trying to think of anything else that would help.
Anybody have any questions? Pretty good. Covered the live bait, the trolling, planers.
Okay, I have a long question.
Hold on, do I need to sit down?
When you're trolling, are you paralleling the shore, keeping a constant depth, or are you gradually working deeper and then a moving back shower like a zigzag pattern?
Okay, so if you're really, really familiar with the area and you fish here enough, you kind of get an idea of that. Most times tunas, I'm assuming we're talking about tunas, tunas are going to be generally either on the reef anywhere from 115 to 120, or they're going to be in that 150-foot range, or they're going to be in that 180 to 240 range because there's a ledge out there. So with your question, if you're not sure what's going on, focus on the reef first and do the shot. Because here's the problem is when you cover all those depths in one shot, unless you're staying in one area, you're missing so much fishing area. So let's say you want to cover 5 miles, do your 115, 130, for example, for 5 miles. Just stay in that depth. No bites, you move out, do the 150 to 200, for example, and then come back. But in that same 5 miles. And then if that doesn't work, you go out to the next side. Because if you start wandering all the way out from 115 to 250, let's say, you're missing the whole area. Unless you stay in a mile radius, then you can go in, out, in, out, in, out all day long. If you're just like an hour to fish, you want to fish along the wrecks, for example, then you can do that. But try to focus on staying real tight on a lot of things, because most of the time you're going to see that most of your fish are in the same depths. You're not going to get one that's at 146 or something like that. You're going to generally see you're going to get them like at 150, 120, or the 180. The ledge is at 240, so just before that. So, I mean, I would hone those definitely those depths for a little bit amount of time, and then focus and move around a little bit, and focus on the tides. I will throw a little tidbit of information for tides. Tunas love slack tide. So no matter what the tide's doing, coming in and going out, they love slack tides, especially the big ones. So with that being said, if you know that the area that the tunas are going to be in, you only got a 30-minute window. So fish that area hard.
Do you fish them on top during slack tide or on bottom?
If you're trolling, then you do your planers but if you're live baiting, you can kite fish or drift, whatever you guys are working on. But you got to really figure out what the area that they're in. And a lot of times they're going to hang around wrecks where the baits are at, of course. And then the ones that you're catching on the reef are traveling. There's not really a spot where they're going to be hanging out, so you'll catch them. That's why trolling sometimes is very productive, because you can cover ground and find that. But now, once they start to settle in a little bit with the bait stuff, you'll find that they're going to be hanging around wrecks, for example, because there's bait. And then that's where you'll see a lot of, obviously, when you go out there and you see a whole crowd of people, obviously that's where everybody's been doing good. So hopefully that answered the question.
Now, when you're trolling,
Mm-hmm.
you troll south or do you troll north?
Well, if you want to cover, all right, if you come out Boca Inlet and you want to go to the north, let's say you're going to go 2 miles, then I would troll north, and then come back south, and then troll north. Just those 2 miles, if that's what you're working. So I like to not go really in a straight line. It seems like if you kind of veer just a smidge, you kind of cover your ground very well.
I know some charter captains, they go east and west.
Yes.
And they kind of work an area like
Okay, so the reason they do that is because of the current. So if the current's strong going to the north, because if your spot, let's say this blue vise is your spot, okay? And the current's ripping to the north. So you're going to want to kind of go like this, because it's going to slow you down a little bit so you can cover it. Or if you just want to fish the spot, obviously east and west. But if there's like light current, you want to kind of do this.
You're creating a Z pattern from 120 to 150 between the numbers of 18 and 22 on your latitude and longitude. And then
If that's the area they're in,
like
yes.
Cory said, you're going in 120 to 150. If that's not working, you're doing 160 to 200 in a zigzag Z pattern, north to south, from your numbers like 26 to 18. 18 being the inlet, 23, 24 being the water tower. So, answering your question in a more basic elementary term would be a zigzag pattern, like Cory was using with his paper towel. From those depths between a 120 over the ledge to 180, and then narrowing it down even more so. But you have to take your time, and if you're taking the tide in consideration, this morning the tide or the current was ripping to the north. I barely had it in gear, and we were doing 7 knots to the north. So even though we're trying to take our time, I even had to zigzag a little tighter. So I was making my zigzags even a little more exaggerated. Exaggerated from my open inlet to my 24 number, which I really like that stretch of land, 18 to 23. I was actually making my turns a much more exaggerated because the tide was going so hard to the north. Because I wanted to cover less ground, the current was pushing me so fast north, I was making my my turns even tighter. So I was zigzagging even, sharper. Now, if the tide was going slower, then I can make my turns even slower. So you definitely pay attention to your current, whether it's going north or south, how fast it's going. And then, like Cory said, your 120 to 180, tack to the north with the current. And then if that's not working or producing, then your 200, or your 180 to 200 tack or 220 tack back to the south, slower or faster.
So and also to add to, if there's current, a lot of current, people are going to ask, do you troll with the current or against the current? So depending on same speed the whole time. If you're going with the current, obviously you're going faster. You're going against the current, you're going slower. Now, if you're getting a lot of bites going with the current, that means that the planers are down deeper, for example, for the planer fishing, because they're down, because you're going with the current, so it's down a little deeper. And if you're going against the current, it means the planers are going to be up higher. So you kind of pay attention on which direction you're going to be going. So if you're going, and a lot of times going with the current, you're going to get more bites because it seems like your planers are down where they should be versus being up too high.
Yeah. Saturday was a little bit of a south current.
Yes.
We only got bites moving south.
Correct.
No bites coming back.
And you cover more ground too, going with the current.
That's right. Yeah, that too. But yeah, once if you, everybody kind of knows the areas with the tunas. If you fish out here a lot, I mean, you just know the wrecks. You know the up to the north. You know, there's a lot of. Basically, you could come out there and have 6 or 7 spots to fish, and you know. So if you know those 6 or 7 spots and you work the area really good and you're going to the next spot, just go beeline it straight to it, and then work that area a little bit, and then beeline to the next one. So that's, I mean, that it's. But again, if you don't know the area, then yeah, that's the best recommendation because it's kind of tough. It's and obviously if there's bait, if you find bait, stay there and work the bait.
If you don't know the area and you're not familiar with the martini glass or the mailman or the blue roof, you just contact Goddess Charters.
That's right. And we can certainly show you a few spots that might produce.
Do you ever leave fish to find fish?
No. The only time we leave fish to find fish is because we've got our limit. So if we got our limit of kings, then we leave them.
Right.
We leave and go try to find something else. And what's terrible is that a lot of times when we'll catch our kings, for example, because the kings are biting really well right now, you'll catch them very quickly. I just know from experience that if you can stay in there and work that area, you will get that oddball.
Right.
But unfortunately, you got to go
Feel
through
the tide.
50 kings to get that wahoo or a sail.
What tide do you like?
I like, well, if I'm fishing for kingfish, I like the outgoing tide. That's my favorite. Wahoos is going to be the end of incoming slack, beginning of outgoing. Tunas are like the same thing because that slack is a big deal.
Don't believe in the tide.
I know they don't, and I don't understand why they don't. But the only way I can suggest, if they don't believe me or anybody else, go out there and fish 5 straight days, all day solid, and take notes, and you'll see there is a big deal. Is there any? Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can cover for you guys that will help you produce more fish. Just remember, light tackle is best. I mean, the easiest thing is go a little bit lighter leaders. Anywhere from 40 to 80 pound, depending on if you're live baiting or trolling, and that'll help you produce more fish as well. So this light tackle is match the hatch to the fish if you can. The reason we're all laughing because we had a vicious dog break through the window here and just about attack us. Now he's over in the corner there pouting. Put him in timeout.
All right, so I guess if there's no more questions, this is it. We want to give a huge thank you to Cory and Mrs. Cory Goddess, Miss Goddess, for coming out. Huge wealth of knowledge. Thank you very much for coming out. So I want to give you like the last bite of the apple. Just tell everybody how long you've been fishing, charters, where you're located, phone number, how to get in contact with you. So just let them all know.
All right. Well, collectively, Lisa and I have fished the water 60 years, and our boat's at Marina 1, which is in Deerfield Beach. Our contact information's on this card, as you saw, goddesscharters.com. Check it out. You can see both phone numbers there as well.
Upside down. Backwards.
And we know the area just a little bit. We've Googled a lot of it, but we know a lot of it. Just kidding.
Yeah, so these guys know the area, and they also know the Bahamas. I think you guys do Bahamas trips
Yes,
too?
we do, and we can take you over there and enjoy different kinds of things, bottom fishing, trolling, whatever you guys want to do. It's our passion, and you'll see it in our faces and how we entertain and have a great time when we do snorkeling, diving, all kinds of different things. Because we love the outdoors, and our joke is that we're on the water 8 days a year, or 8 days a week. So it's our passion.
Yeah, these guys they don't just love what they do, but they actually follow through and they win major tournaments. I mean, these guys know how to catch fish. So if you guys have any questions, call them up. Bend their ear. Don't be afraid to get on the boat and try to see some of the secrets that they use when they're fishing, because they're going to show you some stuff out there on the boat. So don't be afraid. Call Goddess Charters if you need contact for them. We, of course, have it here at the store, and we're happy to promote their business just like they do with us. Also, anybody that comes in over the next week that watched this seminar, if you say Goddess Charters 15, you will get a 15% discount in the store. So we're promoting that.
Goddess 15.
Goddess Charters 15. Boom, let's go. Come on, right now. So with that, we want to thank Sean, Brent, Offshore Anglers. You want to come up and say something, Sean? Come on up.
This is our camera guy.
It's the camera guy, the tech guy.
Did a great job.
I'm always behind the scenes. I really don't like to be up in front of you. I spend too much time usually in our meetings, and I talk too much, and I know all you guys know that as well. But yes, we have our Series 3 mini tournament going down this Saturday. We changed the rules. If you guys check that out, go up onto our website. As you will know now, there's a 2 species out of the 5. So you can turn in 5 fish, 2 of each species, 2 kings, 2 dolphins, whatever. You choose whatever you want. As you know, it's all based on length. So you catch your fish, you have a specific amount of time to deliver your video through a timestamp. So it has to be timestamped. I know one team was having an issue with the timestamp, and if you really think about it, it was probably their camera. Because out of the 21 teams, everybody submitted their videos literally minutes after they took them, and we accepted them. The only problem is my computer processor wasn't as fast, so there was a lag between the video uploads and the live scoreboards. But I'm hoping to have that fixed this week. You should start to see now when someone posts their fish, it pops up on the screen. Their live video feed of their gaff shot to the boat will pop up right next to their team as well, so you can see exactly how they caught it and why they received those points. So call, text me, and if you have any questions on that, it's $100 once you're in the series. With the $100 get in, the average payout is about $2,500. So that's a pretty good. You pay in the $100, which usually you run what, a 4 or 5 man team. That's like $20 each. And this past weekend it was $2,080 payout on that. Pretty cheap. But you got good teams you're competing against, so I don't think it's an easy job. What we found, most of the guys that were bringing in the big fish were on the kites, were on the live bait, and they were on that drift. The teams that were trolling were picking up the smaller kings, picking up the football tunas. The jumbo tunas were all live bait. So you have to check out your current, check out your color of your water. If it doesn't look like what you're doing, you have to make current. If there is no current, you got to troll. You got to make current. If there is current, set up your kite spread and get going, because the fish are there. We'll look forward to. I'll be behind the scenes.
The 1 hour for if you do run offshore.
Oh yes, you have between that timestamp that you take that photo and submit it, you have 1 hour. So say you take that video, you're offshore in the sword grounds, you get into a school of dolphins. Your timestamp says 11:01. You will have till 12:01 to get into cell phone range. If you are at 12:03, all teams, all members, all anglers can see that you're 2 minutes late. That video will be deleted. Those fish will not count. So I suggest don't go too far off. But
Or get AT&T.
Yeah.
They get 12 miles out there.
If you got a cheap cell phone service and you got to get back to 3 miles, you're gonna have a big problem.
Yeah.
So, I'll see you guys this weekend, man. Thank you so much, Cory.
Pleasure,
you guys
sir.
Goddess, you guys are awesome, man. I appreciate
Pleasure.
everything.
Thank
too.
you for coming.
Thank you, sir.
Awesome. With that, it's Miller time.
Yes.
Cheers to everybody.
No, nobody has Corona here, so.
We got Fireball. Fireball.
Thank you, guys.
Enjoy it, man.
Cheers.
Oh, pleasure, sir.
Oh,
You too.
you're supposed to get in here too.
Oh,
Good job.
cheers. Fist bump,
Good luck
Des.
fishing, everybody, and have a great time and be safe.
Big dog.
Big dog! Our vicious animal over here.
Right?
You want the Fireball?
Oh my gosh, that's a towel.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so funny.
Yeah, you like lick that whole leg.
To be picked up.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Tell him. You tell him.
Fisher, come on, Fisher. Oh, you know your name, don't you? Look at that, he looked right back. Fisher, get it, Fisher.